Where do you start with people? What's your, I guess, sorry, I have so many questions and they're all coming out at once, but who should start a podcast?
My thought on podcasting is, if you are a business, you should have a podcast. Okay? Like, if you are a business, you should have a website.
You telling people they should list out 200 guests?
It doesn't have to be guests per se, but like when we're doing this with someone, we probably brainstorm maybe 300 or 400.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Dr. Jeremy Weisz. He is sorry, I messed that up. He's been featuring top entrepreneurs with video interviews since 2008, and he also owned and operated his own chiropractic and massage facility in downtown Chicago. So, sorry about that. My intro page got all mixed up. I don't know what happened there. So anyway, we'll let you tell us about yourself anyway. Thank you for being on the show. Thanks for coming today. I truly appreciate it and really looking forward to the conversation. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, me too, Jason. I mean, you have a cool background. Yeah. I mean, people listen. This is amazing. So it's almost like I want to jump in asking you questions about doing surgeries on pets, but I'll start with, yeah, I mean, I have a weird background, kind of like you. Like you do the real estate investing. You're like, the most interesting man, the Dos Equis guy or something, right?
Right.
But no, I studied biochemistry at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I did that because, well, my dad suffered with really bad neck pain, and he was told that nothing would help him. He just kind of had to live with it. I finally saw a chiropractor, and after a couple months, he was like 100% better. So I saw him go through that. That was in high school. And I go, I think I want to be a chiropractor. And I went and worked for the chiropractor that he in high school that he saw, and I saw people just come in with pain and leave with a smile. And so I decided that's what I was going to do. And I heard that I researched and I heard the hardest classes in chiropractic school were biochemistry, and the board exam, the hardest part of the board exam was biochemistry. So I figured if I major in biochemistry, then I'll ace it right when I get there.
Makes sense.
And so I ended up going to chiropractic school, and that was the truth. I actually did ace it based on doing that. So I've always kind of just thought 4, 5, 6 years ahead, as far as that goes. And in chiropractic school, they don't teach you business, right? In vet schools, they don't teach you business. They don't teach you marketing. So I was going to these business and marketing conferences, and early on, this is like, 2005, 2004. And I stumbled across this thing. It wasn't called podcasting, really, because most people didn't know what a podcast was. Mm-hmm. But it was more, some people were doing these interviews and publishing them online, like audio format. At that time, there wasn't Zoom or Riverside or any of these, there was Skype. And so I decided this is combine all things I love. Okay. It combines relationships, right? Giving to relationships, featuring people. It, combined professional development. I get to ask every question I want. So, early on, I had, the founders of P90X and RX Bar and Quest Nutrition. I get to ask them whatever I want, building a business, building a brand. And so I love that. And it's content marketing, right? Like with the conversation. So I started doing that. I had, a chiropractic practice. And so people were coming to me, this is like 2007, 8, asking me to help them with their podcast. Like I did not set out to help, start a business, helping people launch and run their podcast. People started coming to me, asking me. And so I love new things. So I'm like, sure, let's do it. And I had already built a team because, as you know, running a practice, I may, be seeing patients from like 9 to noon and like 2 to 5, 5 or 6. And so there were these gaps in there. And so I decided, sure, I built up a team. So when I was doing the interviews, I had a team built all virtually that were helping me put this out because I'd want to pull my hair out if I was trying to do it all myself. And so I started taking on clients for that. That turned into a separate business. And eventually I sold the chiropractic business, and I only help people, launch and run podcasts. And it's really, we don't do true crime podcasts or comedy podcasts or sports podcasts. It's really people who have a business, right? And people who want to gain authority in a specific niche, people who want to form relationships in a specific niche. And that's really, we focus a lot on this, not just like the production piece, but the strategic piece as well.
Fascinating. We have a unusual but similar backgrounds, I think, with medical background and now although I'm not helping people with podcasts, but it's always interesting to see kind of that mix or crossover of different industries and things. So you started doing this in, you say 2006?
Yeah, 2007-8. 2006, I was going to these marketing business conferences, and I kind of stumbled across some early people like that were kind of publishing and doing interviews with people, not in a very sophisticated way, but I took to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's very early. I would say extreme early adoption in that I don't think, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, like that's when I knew that podcasts were starting to get popular. So you're talking about nearly 20 years ago where you were doing this on a regular basis and then helping other people do it as well.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of tools at that time. I mean, the tools were, Ecamm call recorder, which still exists, by the way. And I ended up having the founders on my podcast, and that integrated with Skype. It also integrated with, I needed to get an Apple computer for it to work at the time, because there was a convoluted way to do it if it wasn't an Apple computer. And so I was really, sometimes Jason, I had to go on and coach people how to download Skype and upload a computer because I wanted to do video as well. Right. And that's what I was doing, so everything was via Skype at that point. Skype doesn't exist. I think Microsoft stopped.
Yeah, they just did
supporting it actually. Yeah. But that was my mode of communication early on. Yeah.
I am really fascinated by the timing of this. I mean, the iPhone came out in 2007, so it's just to give people a perspective of we were just I guess kind of in that early smartphone stage there. So
yeah,
you've interviewed a ton of obviously high level people. I'm interested in kind of when you're coaching people and helping them start their podcasts, like where do you start? And I'll tell you kind of I didn't want to do a podcast. I was actually pretty against it. I don't love the idea of myself on camera, listening to my voice, that sort of thing. Makes me nervous, but I was encouraged and sort of pushed by a couple of mentors, and they were like, this was when I was getting into real estate investing.
Yeah.
This is how you prove yourself in the space and blah, blah, blah. And it's the business card of, X years and stuff. But I mean, you were doing it before it was sort of common. How do you, where do you start with people? What's your, I guess, sorry, I have so many questions and they're all coming out at once, but who should start a podcast? I guess maybe I'll start there.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
So my thought on podcasting is, if you are a business, you should have a podcast. Okay? If you are a business, you should have a website. Right? That's how I feel about podcasting. Someone wouldn't be, there are some people who don't have a website, Jason, obviously, but not many. If you have a business, you are not legitimate. If someone's like, oh, what's your website? And you don't have one, they're like, you don't have a website? Are you a real business then? right? And so I feel like if you are a business, you should have a podcast. And the reason is there's different ways to utilize a podcast. Okay. And I'm not even talking about gaining a big following, right? But there's two types of episodes, right? There's interviews like we're doing now. And there's thought leadership episodes. Okay. Right. And thought leadership episodes, I kind of define as the internal expertise of that, the founder, the president, and the team. And so even if someone did that, right, and answered questions, like even just take a vet practice, right? People are like, well, what kind of medication, like how long is my dog going to be knocked out for? I mean, there's probably a million questions that the team gets. Yeah. So I think of what if you could just answer all these questions in an episode, send it to them ahead of time and after, and it answers all of them. It saves the team time, the staff time. It gives a better experience to the person. So if you give me like, if anyone spitballed any use case for like any business, I can tell you that there's also, so there's thought leadership episodes, right? So to answer your question, I think any business should have a podcast. Okay. And there's the reasons why, and you were kind of saying, where do you start? Right. And the way I start is when we have a client we're working with, we create a Dream 200 with them. A Dream 200, some people define that as someone's ideal client, right? I kind of broaden it to, it could be ideal client, it could be ideal referral partner, it could be big authorities in the space, and things like that. And so we want to brainstorm who are the people that you want to be involved in the podcast, whether it's as a guest or to give you suggestions on thought leadership episodes or whatever it is. And so creating that Dream 200 is where we start, because that is the most important piece. Okay. So I know you are like overloaded, busy in your vet practice, but like I would be, if I wasn't, I would go, okay, who are all the like premium pet food company or, pet stores in the area? And like, they can tell me about all the cool latest and greatest, chews and this and that. And then they're like, oh, this Jason guy, he's really experienced. He's really cool. If we have someone come in with a problem, we're going to send them over there. But even at a minimum, if someone didn't want it, it's like just discovering from a professional development standpoint, I would do it if no one's listening, because I get to discover resources for myself, right? And so I'd be like, oh, I never heard of that product. And so I could ask questions of that person, and discover things from a professional development standpoint. So I start with that Dream 200. Who's the sphere of people I really want to communicate with? And then the next step is just reaching out, right? And, I've gotten and you've gotten probably terrible outreach messages, right? I get them every day on LinkedIn and email, all right? And so what are the best ways to reach out, especially to busy people? Okay, like some of the guys, I had the co-founder of Pixar on. There's a certain type of message, and people are like, how'd you get the co-founder of Pixar on? I emailed them, okay? Yeah. Every 6 months for 9 years. But that's beside the point of the frequency. Okay. Yeah. But I emailed him. I found his email. It wasn't that hard, actually. There's, I use, if I don't have their email, obviously LinkedIn, but I don't know if you've used Rocket Reach before. Rocket Reach is a tool. You can pretty much find anyone's email. You could go to LinkedIn, take someone's LinkedIn profile, input it into Rocket Reach, and it gives you their work and personal email. There's a free version too. I do pay for it. Yeah. And I mean, obviously you could reach out via LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever through their contact form. But if I get their personal email, they're probably like, who is this person? They're stalking me. Cause I may, put their business email and then CC their personal email. Right. And they may filter out their business, but like they'll check their personal email. So, the outreach messaging is key, and it's always got to be a give. And that's what I love about podcasting is it's a give to someone, because you're featuring them, you're profiling them and sharing with the world what they're working on. So naturally I want to be a give if I'm reaching out to someone who's busy, etc. And so the outreach piece is paramount. Okay. Like if I find a product I like, sometimes I admire the product and I reach out to them and just want to feature them. So like I remember I was at a grocery store. I like kombucha. Okay. And I had wild tonic kombucha, and I was drinking it. I was on my way home, walking. It was like a 10-minute walk. I'm like, this is really good. And so I looked at the back. I took a picture of myself with the bottle. I look at the back of the bottle. I find the email address. I message them, hey, I'd love to have the founder of the podcast with a picture of me. Love your product. By the time I got home, Jason, they had responded, oh yeah, we forwarded this to the founder. This is great, right? So people get in their head, it's hard to get guests or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's not as hard as you think. And they didn't know me, by the way. I didn't know anyone there. I just like admired the product. Now it helps in the outreach. There's certain elements like copywriting 101, which is, making sure to include social proof. So, for example, one of my friends, I like IQ bars. I don't know if I like protein bars in general, but IQ bars, one of my friends was like, oh, I love IQ bars. I'm like, you know what? I should invite them on the podcast. I'd love to hear the story behind it. And so I emailed them, and within like 24 hours, the founder responded and said, yes, I'll come on. And so I had Will on, and my friend was like, how did you get him on so quickly? And I'm like, well, I just emailed them, but I included social proof, right? I said, by the way, I had the founders of RX Bar, Quest Nutrition, Jimmy Bar, and I listed like 3 other large CPG brands. So he's like, okay, I'm just signaling this is legit here. Okay. So in outreach, and that could be for anyone listening, right? I don't care what industry you're in. If I always try and include social proof in the message. Okay. And so create the Dream 200, then obviously reaching out is the next step. And then after that is really producing amazing content, right? The art and science of producing amazing content. And I kind of segment that into kind of technology, and then also kind of the art and science of the actual interview. People always ask, Jason, and they probably ask you too, what technology do you use? What do you use for this and that? And it's like, that's so easy. I mean, it's a simple, like you could use any USB mic, right? This is a Blue Yeti, right? I think it's $150. I have an ATR 2100 over there. That was like $100. Just in case this one conks out in the middle of us talking, I could just USB it into the computer. That's it. And then you need some kind of recording, whatever and I tell people, just use whatever you normally use. Like if you use Zoom, use Zoom. If you use Microsoft Teams, use Microsoft Teams. If you like Riverside, use Riverside. It doesn't matter to me what people use, just so it's reliable. Okay. And then it's the content piece. And the content piece is more like, okay, conducting the interview to make I also keep this super simple, Jason, when I'm thinking about it. So I've done, like I said, I've been doing interviews for like 16 years. I've done thousands of interviews, and I go into it not thinking of it as like this big interview, but like just I'm having a conversation with someone, and also ask questions I'm curious about. That's it, right? If I'm curious about, like, and we were talking before we hit record, I was like curious, like, okay, do you know how to crack like a dog's back? Because I want to do that. Like I would ask about that, and because I'm obsessed with those videos, watching those videos, and I'd make you like, okay, well, how's the joint movement of the hips so I can like take my dog, and my wife would probably kill me if I like tried to adjust the dog's hips. But I have a little bit of background in adjusting with chiropractic, but I would just ask questions I'm naturally curious about, and some people may find it interesting, some people may not, but I find it interesting. So I've listened to some interviews, maybe they were talking about like their favorite wine or whatever, and I don't care about wine. So like that wasn't a topic or podcast maybe that resonates with, and some people would geek out on that. I like to ask about business books, and because I'm a big Audible fan, I like to ask about software and tools and productivity and podcasts and things like that. And some people may come in and go, I just care about someone's favorite wine, and they may not like anything I ask, but I like it. So the content piece is really, I get to be selfish and ask what I want to ask. You know what I mean? And the next is just growing your reach. And, my philosophy, Jason, is always just, how do I give to people?
Yeah.
Right. And with a podcast, I get to have someone on, then I get to profile them. I do a separate post on it, full post, video, audio. I'll create social clips afterwards, post it on social, tag people. It's just a way for me to continue to give to people, right? And that just forms great relationships, right? I'm not asking for anything, right? So that's, kind of how I think about the progression.
Yeah. Great breakdown. And I have some follow-up questions. First, you say Dream 200. Is that, are you telling people they should list out 200 guests? Is that where the 200?
At least, it doesn't have to be guests per se, but like when we're doing this with someone, we probably brainstorm maybe 300 or 400.
Wow,
okay. And it could be guests, right? It could just be, like there's 17 different categories. Okay. And I'll give you an example, right? One of the categories is partners, like people that actually know, like, and trust us, right? Because really the Dream 200 can be broken into warm and cold, right? Warm, obviously people want to go to the coldest of cold, right? If we're talking in real estate, like, I don't know who, Grant Cardone, I don't know who's famous in like the real estate industry. Like, I want to have Grant Cardone on my podcast. And they forget about like all the other interesting people in their network because they're going to like, who are the big names in the industry? Right. And so I kind of break it into warm and cold. And, when I think of 80-20 and Pareto's principle, like every single hour. So I'm like, who's the 20% that's going to give 80% of the results? And it's the people we know. So the warm people, right? And so I think of, when we're thinking of the Dream 200, we have the warm and the cold. The warm people are, who are the people who already know, like, and trust us, who are partners and champions. And those are the people I really want to focus in on and give to as much as humanly possible. And of course, I have the cold list that is going on simultaneously as well. And kind of when I talk about those categories, the cold list could be conferences, right? Let's say, if someone's a real estate investor, you're like, you know what? There's these really cool real estate conferences and in the industry. I'm going to like maybe choose one of those and talk to some people from that conference. This would be great information. I get to network people. Then when I go to the conference, I know a bunch of people because I am extroverted by definition, but introverted. Like if you put me in a room full of people, I am kind of sit and like observe, and I'm super quiet. So I like to know a few people when I go to these things. And so I've used that to my advantage since I know my personality, and I kind of sit back having some people on the podcast ahead of a conference. So I at least go in there and I know like 5 or 10 people, and it makes it more comfortable for me, So that's kind of how I think of, the Dream 200. That's an example of a category.
Yeah, no, that's, I actually love that conference idea. I think I need to steal that one, but because I guess it's a great strategy, but I'm thinking, here, in a way, wish I had done that, because in the beginning, it seemed hard to find guests. It seemed, because it's like some people are going on a podcast because they want it to expand their reach. Well, if it's your, 5th episode or 10th episode or whatever, like you don't have reach to expand for them. So it's kind of, finding that, people that are at the same, maybe similar places in their journey to get, and then you might know some that have a little bit bigger reach, but yeah, thinking about it and having 200 or, 300 or 400, like you said, it probably takes some of that pressure off. Because
that's why we start there. Like when we're working with someone, we don't start with, okay, let's do it's like, let's do the strategy. It's same thing with real estate investment. Someone just like, oh yeah, that looks good, let's buy that. It's like you actually do research on what's the ideal strategy. Like, oh, we want to go into this area, we want to be in this kind of population, but whatever it is. The same thing goes with the podcast, right? Which is, what is the strategy first in the type of people and people you want to feature or be involved in this process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. You mentioned social proof on your outreach.
Yeah.
What if you don't have it yet? Like,
that's a great question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's like, let's say it's episode 1.
Yeah.
right? Get that question all the time. Like, okay, Jeremy, I can't list that I had the co-founder of Pixar and RX Bar or whatever. So I say flaunt it if you got it as far as social proof goes. So social proof doesn't have to be, let's say you release 0 episodes. Well, there's still social proof, right? It depends who you're reaching out to, but you have years of industry experience. People have clients they've worked with. You could borrow social proof from the platforms. Like, by the way, I'm going to be publishing this on Spotify and Apple and, iHeartRadio or whatever. Like to some people, that's a really novel concept. To you and I, like we do this, so maybe it's not as cool, but like some people, if I'm reaching out to a vet and I'm like, hey, I'm going to publish this it's going to be on Spotify. They think, oh my God, really? This is going to go on Spotify and Apple, podcasts or whatever. That may be good social proof to them, right? It just depends who you're reaching out to. But years of experience, like a lot of people we're working with, they may be in the industry for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and they're super experienced, but they haven't released a podcast yet. We're just starting it with them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I was thinking like, well, great if you want to have, the founder of one particular protein bar, and you've had 4 other protein bar founders.
It makes it easier.
It makes it easier, but yeah, pulling.
But I had to start with one, right? At some point. Yeah. And usually it goes back to when you think of the Dream 200 and the warm and the cold. Usually that came from a warm introduction from a previous guest. And that's the other thing about a podcast. What I love, and you've probably know this too, it makes it very easy for people to introduce people to you, right? It's just like, hey, do a get to know you call with Jason. Like, let's say it's this like top real estate investor or something. Well, they're busy, but it's a different conversation. You're like, Jason has this amazing podcast, Know Your Why podcast. You should go on it, chat with him. Oh, cool. Right. So it's much easier for people to introduce someone.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that ties into what I was going to, I guess, I wanted to go through some of at least the things that have happened to me in the progression of the podcast. And then maybe you'll, find that it's similar in your experiences and what you coach people on. But, as I mentioned in the beginning, it seemed hard to find guests. I didn't do that Dream 200. So I didn't have that strategy, which I think is a great piece. But now we're nearly at 500. It's like, it's not hard to find guests anymore. Like, I think we have as much inbound as outbound in order to book people. But I also, when I started it, I mean, I was very, very nervous, and I was, I told you I didn't want to do it, but I did build it up in my head, like, oh, this interview and all of this. But now it's just like you said, I just ask people the things that I want to know, which is like a really cool position to be in, and like just get to learn from each guest. And so it's grown into that, where it's like, I certainly hope that people also get value out of it and have similar questions, or would have similar questions if they got to speak directly with you. But it's like, it's one of those things that now makes it a whole lot easier for me to think about it that way, where it's just like, I'm just getting to meet Jeremy and find out about his life. Like, it's just a conversation, and that makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And people, will resonate with the type of questions you ask, what you care about, or they won't too. Right. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Do you feel that having a niche is important? I mean, you've had a podcast for a long time. It seems like you've had maybe, like, I would not put Pixar and RX Bar, or I wouldn't put those in the same category. So how do you think about that? How do you coach people on that type of topic? Usually for businesses, they have a couple segments they're going after as far as want to connect with. Okay. And that kind of, we address that in the Dream 200. There's companies, let's say, I'll give you an example, right? There's a website development company. Okay. And we explore this in the Dream 200. Like, well, who are you working with? Oh, we're working with HVAC companies. We're working with pet supply companies. We're working with
SaaS company. It's like all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then, I mean, it goes back into kind of the question I think about, which is the niche question. Who do you love working with? Who do you get the best results for? And who's actually profitable, right? Because the other two could be true, and they're like, we are not profitable. We work with these government agencies because they require whatever. I'm making it up. But
Yeah.
so those are the questions we think about. And so we were talking to a financial advisor, I remember. And I'm like, well, who's the ideal client for you? He's like, someone with someone with a lot of money. I'm like, well, that could be anything. That's not really a niche, right? So we looked at who you love working with, who you get the best results for, who's profitable. And we found out like they had a number of dentists who were clients, who were good clients. They loved working with dentists. They were entrepreneurial. They weren't too kind of in the weeds. They let them kind of do their thing and their expertise. And so we zeroed in. It wasn't like we said you should have called the dental podcast or anything like that, because I believe you should keep your name is pretty general, which gives you flexibility to have whoever you want. My podcast, Inspired Insider, is general. So I can decide to go in different directions if I want. So I don't want to pigeonhole myself with the name of the podcast, right? From a niche perspective, but my messaging will be very niche when I reach out. Okay. So I like to have and we did a whole episode, by the way. Every question we've gotten, Jason, when I talk about the thought leadership, we've produced an episode on it. So we get the question, how do I name my podcast? What are the 10 different types of thought leadership episodes? Like all of those questions, we have an episode on Inspired Insider to answer those things. And so, when it came to, we get the question, how do I name my podcast? And I said, well, don't try not to pigeonhole yourself because you may change.
Right.
And so in the case of the dentist, like this person will have, yes, they have a segment of dentists. They have a segment of entrepreneurs and founders who are, software founders. But we discovered dentists are they love working with them. So then they went off and they kind of did a large number of profiles on different dental people who run dental conferences, people in the dental industry and things like that. And I remember he had someone on who was ran a dental conference, was a large kind of dental consultant. He had the person on. Afterwards, the person said, why don't you come and be my guest to my conference? And by the way, this was like a $2,000 or $3,000 ticket. It wasn't like an inexpensive ticket. So comped him a ticket. And then if that wasn't enough, when the person showed up, came around and introduced that person to the other big players at that conference, right? You can pay for that type of exposure and introductions and everything like that. So speaking to the niche part, I think having a few niches or like things to think about is, I think, important. And then it's also a way to explore niches. We've had people explore and go, you know what? I help manufacturing companies. I help HVAC companies. I help roofing companies. Go kind of explore those niches and see who do you resonate the most with? Like who, and so have on a smattering of all of them and then see what you want to do. That's the cool part about a podcast. You have the flexibility to do whatever you want. Now, I wouldn't name it the roofing podcast, but, name it something more general.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is your feeling on people monetizing their podcast? Like, do you think that should be an immediate goal, a consideration? Yeah. I mean, how do you look at that from your client perspective?
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing. I think to get ROI with the podcast is the most important thing because I've seen people don't quit, Jason, because of poor audio quality. They don't quit also because they don't like doing the podcast, actually. They quit because of ROI, if they're not getting ROI. And ROI, by the way, people, I think about ROI in different ways. When I think of ROI, that's why I say, when you ask who should have a podcast, if someone has a business, because the best way to monetize a podcast is with someone's actual business. It's not getting a following and getting sponsorship. That's really, really hard to do. And it's also fickle. It's like,
Yeah.
well, and the sponsors come and go. And so like, I think that's not a great, now, if you were like a Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss or whatever, and you build up, and a lot of these people, they build up audiences not through podcasting. People don't realize if you're the host of Fear Factor, you're a commentator on the UFC, you go on comedy shows all over the place. Like, people have gained their podcast following not just through getting exposure on this one podcast channel, it's through all these other mediums and channels. So if someone's trying to reproduce that, it's very difficult. But if someone has a podcast, like for instance, we have a client who's a agency for e-commerce brands. Okay. This year, they got $2 million worth of business. Just from, lifetime value of a client for them, maybe a couple $100,000, right? So if they get, let's just say lifetime value of a client is $200,000, they get 2 clients this year, that's $400,000, right? It's a no-brainer if you have an actual business and your lifetime value, right? Especially a B2B business has a higher lifetime value. Even B2C, if someone's a surgical center, regenerative medicine, or a law firm, some of these cases are worth a lot, and connecting with different partners and people like that. So ROI, I think, is of the utmost importance, or I've seen people quit time and time again if they don't, right? But they have to actually have a business linked to their podcast. I saw someone came to me, Jason, they had I think over 1 million downloads a month on their podcast. And I talked to them because they were not monetizing their podcast. And they have an actual business, but their podcast was about something totally different from their business. And they were asking me, how do I get sponsorship and things like that? And I'm like, you don't need that, actually. Why don't you just start doing stuff around your business? And their client lifetime value, I think, was like $30,000 or $40,000. So they could get 1 client that year, and or get a 1 referral partner that referred them 1 client, and it makes sense. But it was hard for them to monetize from a sponsorship, even with 1 million downloads. So
that's actually maybe not the answer I anticipated, because when I think of monetizing, it's that sponsorship piece but that's a very smart idea. Is just, monetize.
You don't care. You're super busy with your vet clinic, but I'm just saying, you get 1 surgical case,
right?
Or you can have someone paying $100 a sponsor for an episode.
Right.
1 surgical case, I take that over, I have this cool sponsor that's going to pay me $100 or $200 or $500 an episode. It just makes it so much easier, makes more sense, and is sustainable.
Yeah. What about frequency? I mean, do you think there's a right number of episodes to release, or what's your thoughts on that?
I think, when I think about this question, I think about how many relationships do you want to build this year? Right? So when I was doing it early on, I was doing 1 a week. Mm-hmm. Now I do 2 to 3 a week, because I doubled down on what's working. I doubled down on forming more relationships. So if someone came to me and they're like, Jeremy, I think, I just want to do 1 episode a month. I'm like, so you only want to build 12 relationships for the podcast this year? And again, I get it if people are busy, but I see it as, wait, you're too busy to talk to your best clients and partners? That should be the only thing I do. I love doing it. Maybe you asked, going back to who shouldn't be podcasting or should be. I had one person say, what if I don't like talking to people or interviewing people? And I go, then you should not do a podcast.
Yeah.
But your company should do a podcast, and you should have someone from your team who does like doing that, do it. Right. And so I said, you shouldn't be doing it. To this person was a founder, but someone should be. They thought I was going to talk them into doing a podcast. I'm like, I don't think you should be the one doing it, because you'll hate it. You want to be someone who looks forward to the conversations. But from the frequency side, I say, one a week is a good cadence, I think, to stay consistent. I just got off the phone right before, like an hour before we talked, and someone was like, Jeremy, I want to do 2 times a week. And I go, that's great. Why don't you start with 1 a week? And then if you get a backlog of like 3 months, then we can start publishing 2 a week for you. But it's a big, to keep up with 2 a week, which I have for like a decade, is not an easy feat. Even if some weeks I have 7 to 10 interviews a week. So I'm like way far ahead, but then Thanksgiving hits, the holidays hit, and all of a sudden that backlog kind of gets eaten away at. So how many relationships do you want to build this year? Like, I probably feature 100 to 150 people a year, and then multiply that by over a decade, right? And so yeah,
that's a great way to look at it, actually, because I do think, do you think that you can do too many? I've seen people like, oh, we release an episode every day. And I'm like,
listen, keeping up with that is difficult. If someone can keep up with it, more power to them.
Yeah.
It's also logistically, and again, I think of ROI, right? If they're getting the ROI to justify the energy and effort, because it does take time logistically. When I think of everyone thinks of a podcast episode differently, right? Some just publish it on the channel. When I think of it as a full blog post. It's got the video. We put it on YouTube. Right. It's got the audio. It's got the transcript. We'll do snippets of it. So it's a lift, right? And so doing that every single day is it's an investment, no doubt, but that's a lot to keep up with too. But if it works, sure, like double down, triple down on it, go for it if you can keep up with it.
Okay. Yeah, it would be a lot of work to do that, but I didn't know if you felt that there was some sort of like oversaturation if you're talking every day. But I guess it's different people are going to have different episodes resonate, and so you may have you may not have huge viewership for every single episode, but then you're keeping up with that.
I think, and I don't know how it is lately, Jason, but I know Jordan Harbinger's got the Jordan Harbinger show. He gets tens of millions of downloads a month. Okay. Which is by the way, a different business model than having, than what I'm talking about, because you become a media company at that point. He's had Mark Cuban, he's had Kobe Bryant, and he did an experiment. I don't know how it is today, but when he talked about the experiment, he was doing 1 episode, then he did 2, and I'm not sure if they doubled the downloads. Then they did 3, and it like increased, and then they did 4, and it didn't really bump up the downloads as much. So he's like, the 3 is the sweet spot for him.
Okay.
Right. And I don't know how that is today. That was years ago that we chatted about that, but at some point there's like a diminishing return of how many episodes you put out, and like how much, again, this is more like a media company downloads piece, but there is at some point going to be maybe a diminishing return there.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes total sense. I would imagine at some point we just don't have as much to say. I don't know. You start to run out of things to talk about, but it is an interesting, sort of seeing if there's a threshold there. Well, Jeremy, let me switch gears. I want to ask you the questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is just based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So what is your why? You've obviously had quite a deal of success in the podcasting space and also chiropractic, but what kind of keeps you going? What's motivating you at this point?
It's a great question. Ultimately, I kind of thrive on relationships and giving to people, and when it comes down to it, I get reminded of this a couple times a year. Podcasting is all those things that we talked about, right? It's business development, it's client acquisition, it's sales, it's content marketing. But I also think it's leaving a legacy for people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I started the podcast back when, one of the reasons, from like an actual, when you look and see, why am I actually doing this, right? So my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and him and his brother were the only people who survived out of their family. He was from Poland, and there was an interview that the Holocaust Foundation did with my grandfather, right? And so his legacy lives on because of an interview, right? It's on the About page on Inspired Insider, right? I have it. And I've had, unfortunately, people throughout the years who passed away. And I had one person on, Jordan, who had a 3PL. He was going through cancer at the time. Jordan Guernsey, he was diagnosed. He had Molding Box was his company. He had stage 3 melanoma, and he went on, and it was video, it was audio. And I remember after he passed away, he had like just such a positive outlook, even though he was going through so many challenges. And I got a email from his family member saying, "Thank you for doing this. You know, you really captured the essence of Jordan in this interview." And it was, I realized, you know, it leaves a legacy for people beyond themselves, right? Yeah. And so that keeps me going, like on days like, oh my God, I'm so busy, I have this interview. It's like I remember those stories of people who reached out because it just left a legacy. Or we've had clients who they've interviewed their parents on their podcast before they passed away. Now they have like a family heirloom that they can, you know, a family legacy that they can pass down to their kids and grandkids and everything like that because of that. So, you know, that is, I don't often say it enough, but it is like kind of what I think about underlying with this process.
I've thought about that a little bit with my kids, but that's at an even deeper level, you know, kind of deeper level use of the podcast. But I do think about it sometimes, like, oh, well, I guess hopefully I got a long time, but you know, if I'm gone and my wife and my kids could see me again, listen to me, like if they wanted to, it would be, so it's kind of a cool idea to have that. And now you mentioned the parents thing, and I'm like, all right, well, now I have to have my mom on the podcast.
Exactly.
So I can have something, you know, to be there. And yeah. So it's kind of I never thought about it that way, but the legacy piece behind podcasting is actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and even if someone doesn't want to publish publicly, like the interview with that, like these people actually did publish, you know, these publicly with their parents, but you could just record it and then save it on a Google Drive or something. You know, you don't need to publish it so everyone could watch it too, right? But yeah. No, that's a great idea. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out? I mean, I'm active on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect, just mention Jason's podcast, because I get, you know, send some message, because I do look through everyone. But it's WEISZ, Jeremy Weisz on LinkedIn. You could check out inspiredinsider.com. There's a contact us page on inspiredinsider.com, which is my podcast. And then rise25.com is the main website of our company. And again, if you contact us, it kind of filters back to my team and myself. So all those places are great to connect.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Jeremy, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate having you on and sharing everything that you did. As we talked about, it was a great chance for me to get to ask some of my own questions, my own things I want to learn more about. So thank you for indulging that, and thank you for sharing with us today. I really appreciate it.
I love what you're doing. Everyone check out more episodes of your podcast.
Well, thank you. And folks listening, make sure you connect with Jeremy, obviously, especially if you're thinking about considering starting a podcast. And please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get great guests. And as always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?